Hi, welcome to another episode of Wilken and Gutton Plans, the Balance Sheet Breakdown. Today is week 2 of our 4-part series where we're discussing some of the metrics and levers that really help professional service firms assess their profitability. I'm Chris Frederick, a partner with the firm, and joining me again in this conversation for a second week in a row is Karen Artazanchez, the leader of our professional services group. So Karen, thank you so much for joining again. Last week was great, and I'm looking for that continued greatness this week.
Thank you for having me back. I'm excited to continue this.
So before we maybe dive into this week's discussion of realization, let's recap what was maybe most important from last week's utilization.
That's a great idea. I think two main takeaways. One is really understanding the tasks and activities that your people are performing is really critical to understanding what's driving firm profitability and the impact that those activities have on overall firm profitability. And second thing, there is such a thing as value-added non-billable time. And really understanding the effectiveness of the individuals that are performing those activities is also important because we want to make sure, that we have right people in the right places doing the right things.
That's right. And, I think we'll say for the first time here, I think we've said it maybe 5 or 6 times last episode, that complete, consistent data is imperative to making those decisions, assessing the benefit, continuing to point maybe the ship in the right direction.
Yep, absolutely. I think, particularly in professional service firms, I'll say 3 greatest assets that a professional service firm has is 1, it's people, 2, it's client base, and 3, it's data, and not necessarily in that order.
Right.
So everybody's going to have a different opinion about what's more important. So
and I think that's a great summary. And so jumping into it next, this week's episode we're focusing on realization, right? So now we're kind of back to the billable hour, and really turning that billable hour into revenue into cash.
Yep. So let's get into it. So realization. And we're talking specifically, I think, about billable realization because there's, I guess, a lot of different measures, that you can use the word realization for. So we're talking about billable realization, which really measures the percentage of total recorded billable time that actually is invoiced to clients and that clients pay. So I guess, in order to understand how realization, really relates to firm profitability, I think we need to kind of level set here for a second. Based on experiences and even within our own, practice, comparing our practice to, other firms that we deal with as clients or have consulted with, billing practices from firm to firm vary. And even within a firm, billing practices within practice groups, vary. Lots of different, ways to bill,
right.
Fixed fee,
right? Hourly rates, contingent fee. It's, right. The list goes on and on. So as far as how the revenue is billed, is a bit of a different conversation.
Yep. And the possibilities are endless. You can construct anything. But I think probably one of the more common would be time and materials.
Yep.
So I'd say time and materials and probably
like standard
maybe fixed fee or a fixed rate, fixed hourly rate.
Much like last week, I think we focused a lot on quality, consistent data. To me, the same thing kind of applies here, right? That without that quality, consistent data to help understand, what we're truly getting from those time and material agreements, what we're really getting from those flat fee agreements, it's important to understand what the inputs and the outputs are.
Yeah, and again, we're going to come back to data. You just said that. We all want to know how much money we're making, right? And is this practice area profitable? Is this client profitable? And without understanding, the data underneath, it's really hard to understand that. And again, there's, and I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, you have, different practice areas with different billing models. You could have, what's more important? Is the profit important? Is the cash flow important? So depending on volume and the type of client, the size of the client, the leverage within that group.
Right, there's a lot more that goes into it than just saying, my realization is X, I'm going to make every decision based on this one number, right? I think, to me, that's almost the theme of the whole series. It's there's no one metric that's more or less important than any others, that it's really about taking all of the data we and others have at your fingertips and making the right decisions.
Based on that data. And we said it last week, this professional service firms are not a one size fits one. You know, what works for one firm doesn't work for another. What works for one practice area doesn't work for another practice area. Let's talk about differences, right, within the same firm. I've found that, the billing practices or the mindset, or, you pick your word, the firms do not effectively measure lost opportunity cost. And I think this kind of begs kind of a detour to talk a little bit about standard billing rate.
Everybody's got salary, everybody's got overhead, and everybody's got some level of profit. So how can we set a standard rate, apply that across maybe everything to understand what's moving the lever and where? And like you said, this is one aspect of it, right? If there's industries that have much quicker, better cash flow turnover, hey, that's not captured in realization, but that's important to understand.
Right.
And so this is, but again, without that standard billing rate, that consistent starting point, realization becomes worthless pretty quick.
Exactly. And the standard billing rate, is supposed to capture all of those different components.
It's all encompassing.
Right.
For professional service firms, that's usually the one chance to generate revenue,
Correct.
right?
Professional service, we sell time.
You price the time like you price the widget.
Correct. And typically, the higher up in a firm you go, or the more experienced you get, the more senior you are, the higher your billing rate is, because you're not only selling your time, but you're selling your knowledge,
right?
And your expertise. So just to put some numbers to this, because I'm an accountant, right? And so are you. So I like numbers.
Right. Yeah.
If a partner's standard billing rate, again, that includes salary, includes their overhead, and there's some component of profit built into that standard billing rate. If you have a partner whose standard hourly rate is $750 an hour, would you have that partner performing work that you can only collect, $250 an hour, or $375 an hour, to make the math easy, because I don't have an adding machine.
Right.
So kind of tying this back to realization, to kind of drive home the point of what realization is. If you have a partner with a $750 an hour rate doing something that we can only bill and collect $375, the realization there is 50%. The lost opportunity cost is the $375. Right? That's the difference between what we're collecting and what they can bill.
For sure. And when I think about standard rates and caps on capacity, I know we talked about it last week with utilization, the struggles with finding new staff. I feel like most professional service firms we talk to across almost every industry, they have a greater demand for employees at many levels than maybe the supply, right? And so it's about understanding that standard rate, that standard information, to allow us to more quantifiably compare this job, this niche, to maybe the next one. It's hard to understand where those lost opportunity costs are coming in if everything looks to be at 100%.
Yeah, and over the years, as I've spoken, with my clients, my professional service clients, I think there's some resistance, or hesitancy to using a standard billing rate. And just to clarify what I'm saying, or kind of drive a point home, if you've negotiated a rate, you're not going to send an invoice to a client, for a higher rate.
Right. This is not about generating more top line income today, right?
Correct.
So, hey, we've changed our rates, we're going to charge you twice as much. That's not what.
Not at all.
What standardization is about.
Right. I'm talking about internal system measurement and looking at, how people, again, going back to last week, where are people spending their time? What should they be doing? If you have a client whose realization is 50%, right? What decisions as a leader would you make? Is this a good client for the firm? Do you have the wrong people working on the firm?
Right, because it's not always about the client, right? And to me, without the standard billing rates, if it's, we kind of flat bill them, we don't look at maybe the inputs from it, having a standard billing rate, you applying it maybe consistently across the board, it can help identify where the problem is, right?
Right.
Is it this is really a low priority task to the client. It's not something that they put a whole lot of stake in. Is there a way for us to automate it? Is there a way for us to outsource it? Is this work we have to be doing, right? So to me, it's this is maybe just as much about improving efficiencies as it is about demanding more money from your clients.
Right.
That's
And it's not, you said it helps identify problems. It doesn't only help identify problems, it also helps identify opportunities. Yeah. Right? So.
Well, it depends if you're a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of person.
I'm glass half full. I'm glass half full. So, but yeah, so internally, I think we've had, some really good success at, identifying inefficiencies, by looking at our realization. Right. So, and I have an example, in our tax department, one of the things that we were able to identify an opportunity for automation was there was one particular, a tax return, an information form that needed to be filed, that if you measured the time in terms of dollars, like staff dollars, that it took to create, produce this one form, and then it had to go through a review process, and kind of measure that against risk, right? And do we need to spend, I'll make up a number, $1,000 to prepare this form? Our clients weren't going to pay $1,000 for the prep of this form. And we saw that as an opportunity to leverage our internal, technology team and automate the process.
It's a way for us to gain some efficiency, execute the client work, keep the client happy, charge a fair rate, save staff hours, let them do maybe higher value, continue to grow and learn. Where this lower complexity return.
Looking at the realization numbers allowed us to identify the bottleneck.
To me, that's maybe a great example of where standard rate's important, right? If we want to get creative with the rates of some of the folks doing the returns, well, you can make anything 100% if you tweak the rates. This is taking us this amount of input, and this is what we're getting from it. Is there a way for us to more efficiently do that? Update the entire process as opposed to just kicking the client out and saying, this work's not for us, right? I think there's many opportunities between outsourcing, automation, to improve the process internally.
And improve your realization. Right, improve realization, which increases the cash that comes in the door. And one of the thoughts I had is, we'll probably talk more about this, in our next episode, is profitability means different things to different people, and there's lots of different ways to measure profitability, and it really depends on what's important. And going back to something that I said earlier, I'm not suggesting that any firm, change the way that they're doing business or how they interact with their clients. And sometimes in order to really drive profitability and at least explore the opportunities to increase profitability, what you and I as accountants think as profitability and increased bottom line, sometimes you're going to spend more time, or you're going to have to invest a little time in trying to revamp processes, your internal processes to get the data that's going to help you make those informed decisions.
It's the old, the forest through the trees, right? It's hey, everybody's so ingrained with what we're doing today. And I think exactly what you said. Nobody's, certainly you and I aren't suggesting that folks change their billing practices today, that people start firing clients today. To me, this is about, hey, let's level the playing field. Let's get good, consistent data, and we can see where where maybe that higher realizing work is, and if many of the other factors we talked about, timing, payment, collectability. It's another tool to help guide the direction of the future.
Exactly, and that's a great point. The takeaway here is trying to identify those profitable areas, whatever they are, however you define profit, because that's going to be different, again, from firm to firm, practice area to practice area. But it gives you data to allow you to then focus your growth efforts on those more profitable areas, which then ties back to, last week's, and even peeking ahead, to leverage and highest and best use. Who do you want, to have in that role to help drive growth in those more profitable areas?
Right. Billable and non-billable. To the full kind of, full circle. So, Karen, I think that's maybe a great summary, a great spot for us to wrap up this week's episode. Thanks for everybody joining us. Come back next week where we're going to be talking about margins and profitability. I think that's going to be a great episode. So again, this is Chris Frederick of the Wilkin & Gutton Plans the Balance Sheet Breakdown, helping you make sense of the numbers.